Jerem?
Here.
Melton? Pauls?
Here.
Thompson?
Here.
Festerson?
Here.
Gurnett?
Here.
Mr. President.
Here. Would everyone please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance and remain standing for the invocation by Council Member Pete Festus.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I'd just like to take this time to recognize two things. One, recognize the one-year commemoration of the shooting of Officer Roscoe and her death last week, in fact, last Friday, and to note the work of all those who put together the Horses of Honor tribute that many of us attended and how touching that was, and in particular, at the end, with Officer Roscoe's daughter, Olivia, placed on top of the horse there that the World Herald captured in a very, very touching moment for, I think, the entire community. And then secondly, with the unofficial start of summer happening with schools, OPS schools out last week, and many of the rest of our schools out this week, just want to say thank you to all of our teachers for a good school year, and wish a safe and fun summer for all of our kids. Thanks.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
City Clerk certifies publication in Daily Record, the official newspaper of the City of Omaha, on May 20, 2016. Notice for a pre-council and regular council meetings, May 24, 2016. A current copy of the Open Meeting Act is posted on in the white binder on the east wall of the legislative chambers.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to this meeting of the Omaha City Council. The Council thanks you for joining us today. As a courtesy to those in attendance, we ask that you please turn off or silence your phones or any other electronic devices. Before we begin the regular portion of our meeting today, a couple of announcements. The first one is really good news, and it involves three of council members here. One is that tomorrow, Councilmember Melton and I will be going to Memphis, Tennessee for the National Neighborhoods Conference. And part of the reason we're going is Councilmember Jerem went last year, worked with a couple of folks, and that convention is going to be making its way to Omaha next year. And so Ms. Melton and I are going down to thank those who helped to bring it here, and we're going to accept the torch that brings it back to Omaha. The second thing I wanted to let people know today is that I have been working for a while with a couple of groups to try and get historic designation for 24th and Lake Street. I found out yesterday that we have achieved that historic designation that puts us in line for any tax credits, either federal or state. Does a number of other things with granting funds and other kinds of things, plus the prestige of having the designation of being an historic district. So those two things are exciting, and our council has been actively working, and it identifies the fact how serious this council is about working with MEC and everyone else to continue to bring conventions here and continue to build our city. So with that, I guess we'll get started with our regular agenda, Madam Clerk.
Zoning ordinances on final reading and planning board attachments. We can take items 5 through 8 together. They're all one case. Item 5 is an ordinance to approve the PUR, Planned Unit Development Overlay District, in an R6 district located at 3034 Marcy Street. A is Planning Board and Planning Department recommend approval. Item 6 is a resolution to approve the preliminary plat entitled 31 Marcy Southeast, located at 3034 Marcy Street. A is Planning Board and Planning Department recommend approval. 7 is a resolution to approve the replat transmitted herewith entitled 31 Marcy Southeast, located at 3034 Marcy Street. A is Planning Board and Planning Department recommend approval. Item 8 is the resolution approving the subdivision agreement with Uptown Properties, LLC.
Public hearing on agenda items numbers 5 through 8 are today. Proponents, please. Seeing none, are there any opponents? Seeing none, public hearing is closed.
Second.
Moved and seconded to approve items 5 through 8. No further lights. Roll call.
Jerem.
Yes.
Melton. Pauls.
Yes.
Thompson.
Yes.
Festerson.
Yes.
Gurnett.
Yes.
Mr. President.
Yes.
We'll take items 9 through 12 together. Item 9 is an ordinance to rezone property located south of 63rd and West Center Road from MH Mobile Home Residential District to GI General Industrial District. I'm sorry, and GI to MU Mixed Use District. A, Planning Board and Planning Department recommend approval. 10 is the ordinance to approve the major amendment to the mixed use agreement with 6300 Arbor Street LLC. A is Planning Board and Planning Department recommend approval. Item 11 is a resolution to approve the replat entitled Exarban Village South, Lot 2, located south of 63rd Street and West Center Road. A is Planning Board and Planning Department recommend approval. 12 is a resolution approving the subdivision agreement with 6300 Arbor Street LLC.
Public hearing on agenda items numbers 9 through 12 are today. Proponents, please.
Mr. President, members of the council, I'm Mike Weiss with Noddle Companies. We represent 6300 Arbor, which is a wholly owned subsidiary of Exarban Future Trust. As you may recall, now several years ago, the city, Future Trust, and the university entered into an agreement whereby Future Trust agreed to acquire,
He'll turn it on for you.
if we can get this on,
And if you got some sheet, you might want to put it on that easel.
I don't, it's pretty
Okay.
small.
Very small. All right, but it'll fit though. If you put it on that easel, it'll.
Yeah. Something's blocking it.
Yeah. A folder's blocked. Some folder's blocked. Nope.
Excuse me. I think it froze.
Oh, okay.
Somebody's spying on us.
I'll keep going while this is coming up. But Future Trust agreed to purchase an approximately 8-acre site. Let me turn this so that north is to the top, consisting of 2 lots located a half a block south of Center Street and east of the new arena. Lot 1 will be made available to the university for arena parking, and Lot 2, which is the subject of your plat and rezoning today, was offered for private development by Future Trust. And Future Trust has entered into a purchase agreement with Broadmoor Development Company to build an approximately 240 market rate apartment units on Lot 2. And I have a site plan for those. So the final plat that you have before you, final plat's that Lot 2, which is the last of the 2 lots in this subdivision, and attaches the mixed-use zoning of Exarban Village, along with its design standards, to this particular piece of property. I'd be happy to try and answer any questions that you might have.
Thank you. Are there any other proponents who wish to be heard? Seeing none, are there any opponents who wish to be heard? Seeing none, public hearing is closed.
Approved.
Moved and seconded to approve items 9 through 12. There are no further lights. Roll call.
Jerem.
Yes.
Melton. Pauls.
Yes.
Thompson.
Yes.
Festerson.
Yes.
Gurnett.
Yes.
Mr. President.
Yes.
Thank you
The
all.
items are passed 7-0. Resolutions for preliminary plats, and subdivision agreements. Item 13 is a resolution to approve the preliminary plat entitled Skyline Ridge, located northwest of 204th and North Main Streets, along with attached conditions. A is Planning Board and Planning Department recommend approval.
Public hearing on agenda item number 13 is today. Proponents, please.
Mr. President, members of the council, my name is John Fullenkamp. My address is 11440 West Center Road. I'm here on behalf of Gotch Brothers LLC, and this is a piece of property that is in former Elkhorn. Just to orient you, on the right side of the map here is 204th Street, Highway 31, and it's a 5-lane north-south road. And then kind of to the south as I move around here is what used to be Roberts Drive, which is now the new Main Street that goes through, eventually winds through downtown Elkhorn. It is an extra width arterial street. Highway 31, 204th Street is controlled access. We're here on the preliminary plat today, but just to tell you what this project is about, is to propose a mixed-use development, and this is, if you had a chance to read the Planning Department report, is totally consistent with the goals and objectives of the master plan and also of the adopted land use plan as it was changed from Elkhorn to Omaha. There are 5 commercial and office lots and then 1 lot for apartments. And I'd be happy to answer any questions if there are any.
Thank you. Are there any other proponents who wish to be heard? Seeing none, are there any opponents who wish to be heard? Seeing none, public hearing is closed. Oh, Dr. Thompson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Fullenkamp, I've been in contact with Mr. Gotch on this, and I really like what's going on out in that part of the city. The more development, the better. I think that needs to happen on the western edge. I was contacted by some neighbors, and they want me to at least address one question,
okay,
and that being traffic flow. What's been done in terms of looking at traffic flow?
If we can turn this back on again, I can show you. There is only, this is the Summer Glen subdivision that's over here, and it was a subdivision that's developed by Hearthstone. The access, really the only access points to this mixed-use development are on North Main Street here and on North Main Street here because it connects up into the neighborhood. Now, I know that's always an argument that you hear all the time about not connecting neighborhoods to other developments. But that's really one of your really important principles, and so we tried to limit the access. There is no access from the apartments onto North Main other than this access road that handles the commercial as well. There was concern expressed by a couple people at the planning department with regard to the amount of traffic on North Main. Now, obviously, North Main is now North Main of downtown Elkhorn, and it is an extra width street. But we had a traffic. I also happen to represent the sanitary and improvement district that's over here, so we had a traffic study conducted to see if this met the traffic calming guidelines that the city of Omaha has established, and it does. So we will be installing a speed table, subject obviously to the review by the Public Works Department.
Okay. So that.
Now, the other thing I might point out, and this is a piece of property that's sandwiched between a highway and the main street that connects to a downtown, so it's a little hard to keep traffic off of it. I would suggest to you that the other thing that's going to happen is this street right here that says North Honeysuckle on the east side of 204th Street is actually Blondo. And so we are required to help participate with Blondo Street. So there is another alternate access in and out of here onto Blondo Street. Whatever Public Works believes we should do to help handle a traffic situation, we'd be happy to do. I mean, it's as much to our benefit as it is to the benefit of the neighborhood.
Okay, so as long as you're open
absolutely.
to that, yes. And I did make the observation that we are trying to get the BID for downtown Elkhorn started, and one of the main reasons is to get more traffic to the downtown businesses, and so
that is the goofiest way to get to a downtown of anybody I've ever seen in the entire world. In my 45 years of doing this, we have to go up and around.
And I would think that if we're trying to help out the businesses in that area, that this actually will help them. It gives them more customers. So
I would think so.
Yeah. So, but I wanted to make sure that you were open to working with the neighbors on traffic calming devices.
Yeah, there were a couple of ladies here. We had some discussions after the planning board, and we'll continue our discussions with them as we go through the process.
All right. With that, then I'm satisfied. I move the approval.
Second.
You already have a motion and a second. We've already had a motion.
There was one motion here.
I'm sorry.
That's all right.
I'm sorry.
That's all right.
You can have my
Just make sure.
I'll do the second. Okay.
You want to do the second motion in a second? Okay. No further lights.
He's going to withdraw his motion.
I'm losing control quickly here. Roll call.
We need a gavel.
Jerem.
Yes.
Melton.
Yes.
Pauls.
Yes.
Thompson.
Yes.
Festerson.
Yes.
Gurnett.
Yes.
Mr. President.
Yes.
Thank you very
Resolution
much.
is adopted 7-0. Pursuant to City Council Rule 7H, due to no meeting being held May 31, 2016, agenda item numbers 14 through 25 shall be laid over 3 weeks to June 14, 2016 for publication and public hearing. Next. Pursuant to City Council Rule 7H, due to no meeting being held May 31, 2016, agenda item number 26 through 33 shall be laid over 3 weeks to June 14, 2016. Pursuant to City Council Rule 7H, due to no meeting being held May 31, 2016, agenda item number 34 shall be laid over 3 weeks to June 14, 2016 for publication and public hearing. Liquor. Item 35 is the application of Basharaco for a Class I liquor license at 1524044 West Maple Road. It's a new application, old location. It's over from 5/17 for a continuation of public hearing.
Public hearing on agenda item number 35 is today. Proponents, please.
Care?
Come up to the microphone, sir.
It's my first time. Yeah, it's just basically...
Name and address for the record.
Matt
please.
Bashara.
We over, yeah, there you go.
Okay, Matt Bashara. I live at 5619 South 208th Street. Do you want the location address as well?
That is, yeah, whatever you want.
Well, it's
yeah.
listed here. So it's a bar that I bought at 153rd and Maple, 15240, 15244 West Maple Road. I'm just trying to acquire the previous owner's liquor license.
Thank you. Are there any other proponents who wish to be heard? Seeing none, are there any opponents who wish to be heard? Seeing none, the public hearing is closed.
Second.
Moved and seconded to move item 35. No further lights. Roll call.
Jerem.
Yes.
Melton. Pauls.
Yes.
Thompson.
I don't care yet.
Festerson.
Yes.
Gurnett.
Yes.
Mr. President.
Yes.
Item 36 is Crave Restaurant LLC, DBA Crave, 200 South 31st Avenue, Suite 4103, requesting permission to appoint Steve K. Salovek, manager of their Class I liquor license. We have a request from the applicant to withdraw their application.
Motion to withdraw. Second.
Moved and seconded to withdraw. No further lights on item 36. Roll call.
Jerem.
Yes.
Melton. Pauls.
Yes.
Thompson. Festerson.
Yes.
Gurnett.
Yes.
Mr. President.
Yes.
Item 37 is the application of 24th Street Enterprises LLC, DBA Even Hotel, downtown Omaha, 2220 Farnham Street. New application, new location. It's a Class C liquor license.
Public hearing on agenda item number 37 is today. Proponents, please.
Hello, Sean Davis, 21 Lakewood Villa over in Council Bluffs, Iowa, with the ownership group and the management entity, 24th Street Enterprises. This is for Hotel Even on 24th and Farnham.
Thank you. Are there any other proponents who wish to be heard? Seeing none, are there any opponents who wish to be heard? Seeing none, the public hearing is closed.
Motion. Second.
Moved and seconded to approve item 37 and no further lights. Roll call.
Jerem.
Yes.
Melton. Pauls.
Yes.
Thompson. Festerson.
Yes.
Gurnett.
Yes.
Mr. President.
Yes.
Item 38 is the application of Suji Restaurant Group LLC, DBA Sushi Korean Grill, 1303 South 72nd Street, Suites 101 and 102. It's a new application, new location. There are some issues with fencing requirements. If you wish to grant, it would be based on contingent of permits being obtained.
Public hearing on agenda item number 38 is today. Proponents, please.
Hello. My name is Matt Hollenbeck. I live at 8630 Delphinium Lane in Lincoln. And I actually am working with this business. I had a question because until I got the agenda, I didn't realize that there was a fencing requirement. When we actually applied, my intent was not to do alcohol on the patio. It was only to do inside. based off of the space between the patio and the front door, I didn't think it was prudent to do that because I didn't feel I could actually manage that piece. So if we're required to do the fence, we can do that. That's fine. But it wasn't my intent to do alcohol on that patio.
Motion to allow amendment to withdraw the outdoor area. Second.
Moved and seconded to allow withdrawal of the outdoor area. There, Dr. Thompson.
Let's go ahead and vote on that.
Okay. No further lights then, roll call.
Jerem.
Yes.
Melton. Pauls.
Yes.
Thompson.
Yes.
Festerson.
Yes.
Gurnett.
Yes.
Mr. Perrin.
Yes. Dr. Thompson.
Do we have to, we can just vote it without the permits and inspection, right?
That's correct, now that
Okay.
you've deleted the outside area.
Okay, so moved as approved.
Moved and seconded to approve item 37 with the amendment. No further lights, roll call. 38, I'm sorry.
Jerem.
Yes.
Melton. Pauls.
Yes.
Thompson.
Yes.
Festerson.
Yes.
Gurnett.
Yes.
Mr. President.
Yes.
Item 39 is the application of Center Group QS LLC, DBA Quick Spot, 1941 South 42nd Street, Suite 300, new application, old location, for a package liquor license.
Public hearing on agenda item number 39 is today. Proponents, please.
Elizabeth Sevchak, 2120 South 72nd Street, Suite 1200. And I have with me Katie Sharp of First Management, which is the manager of the applicant. And their address is 1941 South 42nd Street, Suite 550. This is just an application they've acquired the previous business that was already operating there. And so they want to continue to sell liquor in the same manner that was previously sold at the Quick Spot. And it's going to continue under the same trade name.
Thank you. Are there any other proponents who wish to be heard? Seeing none, are there any opponents who wish to be heard? Seeing none, public hearing is closed.
Second.
Moved and seconded to approve item 39. There are no further lights. Roll call.
Jerem.
Yes.
Melton. Pauls.
Yes.
Thompson. Festerson.
Yes.
Gurnett.
Yes.
Mr. President.
Yes.
Item 40 is Karma Inc., DBA Flicks, 1019 South 10th Street, request permission for an addition to their present Class C liquor license location of an outdoor area approximately 10 feet by 40 feet to the west.
Public hearing on agenda item number 40 is today. Proponents, please.
Good afternoon, council members. Jeremiah Morello, 605 South 126th Street, co-owner of Flicks Lounge, 1019 South 10th Street. Here to answer any questions today.
Thank you.
Kyle Bond, 605 South 126th Street, also co-owner of Flicks Lounge.
Thank you. Are there any other proponents who wish to be heard? Seeing none, are there any opponents who wish to be heard? Seeing none, the public hearing is closed.
Second.
Moved and seconded to approve item 40. There are no further lights. Roll call.
Jerem.
Yes.
Melton. Pauls.
Yes.
Thompson.
Yes.
Festerson.
Yes.
Gurnett.
Yes.
Mr. President.
Yes.
It's approved 7-0. Item 41 is Roadhouse of Omaha LLC, DBA Texas Roadhouse, 520 North 155th Plaza, requesting permission for an addition reconstruction of their Class C K liquor license.
Public hearing on agenda item number 41 is today. Proponents, please.
Hello, I'm Dave Bosey, 1432 North 161st Street.
Thank you. Are there any other, did you wish to make any other statements, or just?
We're just
answer any
enlarging our
questions?
building, and we'd like to serve alcohol there.
Okay. Thank you. Are there any other proponents who wish to be heard? Seeing none, are there any opponents who wish to be heard? Seeing none, public hearing is closed.
Second.
Move to approve item 41. There are no further lights. Roll call.
Jerem.
Yes.
Melton. Pauls.
Yes.
Thompson.
Yes.
Festerson.
Yes.
Gurnett.
Yes.
Mr. President.
Yes.
Thank you.
Item 42 is Tata LLC, DBA Tata, 6109 Maple Street. Request permission for an addition to their present Class I liquor license location of a basement area approximately 20 by 40 feet.
Public hearing on agenda item number 42 is today. Proponents, please.
Hello, my name is Jose Dionisio. I live on 13011 Nebraska Avenue. Okay.
Thank you. Are there any other proponents who wish to be heard? Seeing none, are there any opponents who wish to be heard? Seeing none, the public hearing is closed. Mr. Festerson.
Thanks, Mr. President. Hi, Jose.
Sorry, how's it going?
How you doing?
All right.
Good. Tell me a little bit more about what we're doing here. So you're expanding into the basement. Is it for private dining or is it?
We are trying to have a private dining area. So since there's no more room in the restaurant to have it as small as it is, we want to put it in the basement. So it's just pretty much kind of like a chef's table type of deal that we want to do. Okay. It's not going to be open every day or anything like that. It's just for private events, pretty much.
Private parties and such.
Yes, exactly.
Okay, great. And how's your ramen place doing?
Doing really well. Yeah,
great.
Really well.
We enjoyed it too.
Oh, okay.
Thank you. Motion approved.
It's been moved and seconded to approve item 42. There are no further lights. Roll call.
Jerem. Yes. Melton. Yes. Pauls. Yes. Thompson. Yes. Festerson.
Yes.
Gurnett. Yes. Mr. President.
Yes.
It's approved, 7-0. Item 43 is 2607 Inc., DBA Chevys, 2607 North Main Street, requesting permission for a special designated liquor license for a beer garden on June 3rd from 6 o'clock p.m. to 12 o'clock midnight with music ending at midnight.
Public hearing on agenda item number 43 is today. Proponents, please.
Good afternoon. Jeremy Edelman, 4655 North 163rd Street. This is an event that we do every year to coincide with the Elkhorn Days Festival, and that's about it.
Thank you. Are there any other proponents who wish to be heard? Seeing none, are there any opponents who wish to be heard? Seeing none, the public hearing is closed. I have a light. Dr. Thompson.
Yes, thank you, Jeremy, for doing a good job each year. It goes off well. There are no complaints, and it's a very good addition to the Elkhorn Days festivities.
Thank you.
Thank you. Move the approval.
Moved and seconded to approve item 43. There are no further lights. Roll call.
Jerem. Yes. Melton. Yes. Pauls. Yes. Thompson. Yes. Festerson.
Yes.
Gurnett. Yes. Mr. President.
Yes.
It's approved, 7-0. Consent agenda. Any member of City Council may cause any item placed on the consent agenda to be removed therefrom. Items removed from the consent agenda shall be taken up by the City Council immediately following the consent agenda in the order in which they were removed, unless otherwise taken out of order as otherwise provided by the City Council Rules of Order. The public hearings on agenda item numbers 44 through 48 were held on May 17, 2016.
Is there a motion? Moved and seconded to approve items 44 through 48. No further lights. Roll call.
Jerem. Yes. Melton. Pauls. Yes. Thompson. Yes. Festerson.
Yes.
Gurnett. Yes. Mr. President.
Yes.
The ordinances are passed 7-0.
The public hearings on agenda items numbers 49 through 64 are today. If you wish to address the City Council regarding these items, please come to the microphone, indicate the agenda item number you wish to address, identify yourself by your name, address, who you represent, and if you are a proponent or an opponent. Seeing none, the public hearing is closed. Mr. Gurnett.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd just like to speak for a moment on item number 51. That's the 2016 major residential street resurfacing project. One of what we hope are going to be a few more throughout this construction season, but this one's the first one out of the gate, if you will. For 15 years, I've been trying to get a road that leads to the #1 zoo in the world resurfaced, and it's finally going to happen this year. And I just wanted to tell the late Mrs. H, sorry it took so long.
Thank you. There are no further lights. Is there a motion?
To approve.
Second.
Moved and seconded to approve items 49 through 64. No further lights. Roll call.
Jerem. Yes. Melton. Pauls.
Yes.
Thompson.
Yes.
Festerson.
Yes.
Gurnett.
Yes.
Mr. President.
Yes.
Resolutions are adopted 7-0. Pursuant to City Council Rule 7F, agenda item numbers 65 through 68 shall be laid over 3 weeks for publication and public hearing. Pursuant to City Council Rule 7H, due to no meeting being held May 31, 2016, the third reading and public hearings on agenda item numbers 69 through 70 shall be held on June 7, 2016. Pursuant to City Council Rule 7H, due to no meeting being held May 31, 2016, the third reading on agenda item numbers 71 through 78 shall be held on June 7, 2016. The public hearings on these items are today. Ordinances on second reading. 71 is an ordinance declaring necessity of appropriating for use of the City of Omaha described property located at 1542 to 1558 North 18th Street and 1552 through 56 Florence Boulevard, and to approve an agreement with Holy Name Housing Corporation.
Public hearing on agenda item number 71 is today. Proponents, please. Seeing none, are there any opponents? Seeing none, public hearing is closed. Next item.
Item 72 is an ordinance declaring necessity of appropriating for the use of the City of Omaha vacant and improved properties located in the King Science Redevelopment Plan area, an area generally defined by Sailor Street, Pratt Street, Florence Boulevard, and 24th Street.
Public hearing on agenda item number 72 is today. Proponents, please. Seeing none, are there any opponents? Seeing none, public hearing is closed. Next item.
Item 73, ordinance declaring necessity of appropriating for use of the City of Omaha property located at 2238 Ohio Street for a site for implementing the Consolidated Submission for Community Planning and Development Programs for year 2016 action plan, and approving an agreement with Jose Guerrero and Virginia Contreras to acquire the property in the amount of $22,000.
Public hearing on agenda item number 73 is today. Proponents, please. Seeing none, are there any opponents? Seeing none, public hearing is closed. Next item.
Item 74 is an ordinance approving an agreement for the sale of city-owned real property and approving an agreement with Habitat for Humanity of Omaha Incorporated. The property is located at 33rd and Pinckney and 32nd and Emmett Streets, north of Adams Park, in the North Omaha Redevelopment Strategy Area, in the amount of $1.
Public hearing on agenda item number 74 is today. Proponents, please. Seeing none, are there any opponents? Seeing none, the public hearing is closed. Next item.
75, ordinance approving a redevelopment and tax increment financing loan agreement with 3020 Leavenworth Partners, LLC, to implement the Midtown Triangle Tax Increment Financing Redevelopment Project Plan with TIF authorization of $2,775,000.
Public hearing on agenda item number 75 is today. Proponents, please.
Good afternoon. Bridget Hadley, City Planning, here to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you. Are there any other proponents who wish to be heard? Seeing none, are there any opponents who wish to be heard? Seeing none, the public hearing is closed. Next item.
Item 76 is an ordinance approving the redevelopment and tax increment financing loan agreement with 1042 South 30th Avenue, LLC, to implement the Sycamore Apartments tax increment financing redevelopment project plan and authorizing TIF in the amount of $368,624,000.
Public hearing on agenda item number 76 is today. Proponents, please.
Bridget Hadley, City Planning, here to answer questions you may have.
Thank you. Are there any other proponents who wish to be heard? Seeing none, are there any opponents who wish to be heard? Seeing none, public hearing is closed. Next item.
Item 77 is an ordinance to approve a contract with the Millard Public Schools for one uniformed police officer and a marked police car to the premises of Millard North High School, located at 1010 South 144th Street, and Millard South High School, located at 14905 Q Street, from August 10, 2016, and ending at the close of the 2018-19 school year.
Public hearing on agenda item number 77 is today. Proponents, please. Seeing none, are there any opponents? Seeing none, the public hearing is closed. Next item.
Item 78 is an ordinance to amend Chapter 24, Article 2 of the Omaha Municipal Code to add and revise definitions to clarify the duties of the Landmark Heritage Preservation Commission. A is a communication from Sarah Howard, Nebraska State Senator, District 9, and you have a communication from Diane Fela, President of the Midtown Neighborhood Alliance, supporting the ordinance.
Public hearing on agenda item number 78 is today. Proponents, please.
Good afternoon, members of City Council. Jennifer Taylor, City Law Department. I have been asked to just briefly explain the changes that are proposed in this ordinance and then to answer any questions you might have. First and foremost, the changes proposed will, as indicated, add and revise some definitions to clarify some of the language in the ordinance, clarify the special work restrictions, definitions in Division 3 to be specific to local landmarks, which is just basically something that was missing in the original ordinance. Add Division 4, which allows the Landmarks Heritage Preservation Commission to actually specifically address, review, and make recommendations on National Historic Register nominations, which they are doing anyway, but we thought it would be appropriate to actually specify that work in the ordinance. And then lastly, to add Division 5, which is, I think you're all aware of, what we call a demolition review ordinance. The demolition review ordinance was requested essentially because it is almost impossible for municipalities and communities like ours to proactively go out and identify and protect historic structures in our community. So what this does is it prevents the what you'd call overnight loss or immediate loss of potentially historic structures and allows for the municipality to have a tool to ensure that significant buildings, and that's significant buildings that merit preservation, have an opportunity to not be demolished without some certain notice and level of public hearing and review by a Preservation Commission. The ordinance provides what I have referred to as a timeout or a stopgap that allows some analysis, review, and input from the public and from the community as to whether or not it might be worthy to either try to preserve the structure itself or present options, alternatives to the owners, have some discussion about incorporating the building into the plans, essentially give an opportunity to preserve buildings that, again, merit preservation. It does provide an exception for those buildings which are structurally unsound, unsafe, or unfit for habitation. It also provides an entire public hearing process from the Landmarks Heritage Preservation Commission through the Planning Board and eventually this body, which would be the final determination on whether or not a demolition application would be approved or denied. Through those public hearing processes, the various different bodies consider not only the significance of the structure itself, but also the economic hardships that may be imposed upon the owner, the economic ability to actually preserve the structure, and the nature of that work. This is actually a relatively common thing that's done in a number of cities across the country. Delay periods run anywhere from 90 to 180 to 2 years, 90 days to 180 days to 2 years. So it's a relatively common process. And essentially the intent is just to make sure the communities do not lose significant properties that merit preservation without some opportunity for discussion and review. I'm available for any questions.
Thank you. Are there any other proponents who wish to be heard?
Hello, council members. My name is Deanna Faila. I'm president of Midtown Neighborhood Alliance. I live at 627 South 67th Avenue. I am also a former Landmark Heritage Preservation Commissioner. Today I'm here, though, on behalf of Midtown M&A, which consists of 17 historic neighborhoods in Midtown Omaha. The Midtown Neighborhood Alliance Board of Directors recently voted unanimously to support the proposed amendment ordinance to Chapter 24, Article 2 of the Omaha Municipal Code that would create a review process before historic structures and homes are demolished. The Midtown neighborhoods are historically rich districts with solid, valued structures well over 75 years old, some well over 100 years old even. These homes and buildings represent the heart of the city with their unique architectural style. People who live and work in Midtown consider the area rich with cultural attributes because of the appealing characteristics of the homes, the buildings, and the people who live and work in these structures. And they're committed as good stewards in holding in trust the historical fabric of our city. The current quick process for obtaining a demolition permit without formal review for demolition is definitely flawed. In the last several years, Dundee Memorial Park neighborhood lost 2 stately, structurally sound historic homes, one built by the noted Omaha architect John McDonald. It was demolished to make way for a larger yard. The home was located at 56th and Farnham, and then another at 113th and at 113 Happy Hollow Boulevard. And then recently this year, another monumental historic home over 100 years old, located at 525 Fair Acres Road, was also demolished by the property owner. The homes were torn down were not in a deteriorated state, and they were not dangerous to the public. So this has been of great concern to my neighborhood, and my neighborhoods and the residents who have no recourse to slow or stop the demolition process. And as we understand it, under the proposed amendment and ordinance, a formal review process would be allowed, along with some public input, when historic properties are being proposed for demolition. And this review process would slow down the current demolition, the quick current demolition process, and protect historic structures so that time is allowed for alternative options. And that's what we like, is to make sure that we can present and help the property owners for possible alternative options. We also recognize the rights of the homeowner, but we believe that considerations should be made by the city to protect historic structures in order to maintain the integrity, authenticity, and home property values of our historic landmark neighborhoods. And so we appreciate your consideration of this very much needed ordinance, and we are grateful to Councilman Jerem for introducing the amendment. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Are there any other proponents who wish to be heard?
Hello, Council. I'm Christine Gerber with Restoration Exchange Omaha at 3902 Davenport Street. And first of all, I'd just like to publicly thank the people who got this ordinance this far, Councilman Jeremy, Jennifer Taylor, and Jed Moulton and Trina, who've worked very hard, and we were so appreciative of all the work that they've done. This ordinance identifies, as Jennifer pointed out, those properties of historic significance, around about 40 a year, according to the city government offices. It allows the Landmark Commission, neighborhood association where the property is located, and organizations like Restoration Exchange to, instead of helplessly watching by as someone takes out a demolition permit and 3 days later the building is gone, it allows us to have time to have a conversation and have a conversation with those property owners about tools that they could use that they may not be aware of to help save their building. Tools like state and federal historic tax credits that they can get up to 40% back to restore their property. Tools like great craftsmen that know how to fix these homes, or people that I know, young people that would love to buy these historic homes, and connecting those with potential buyers instead of tearing down these buildings. But I would like to make one suggestion, an amendment to this ordinance. Right now it stands at 75 years. And I would like to recommend that we change it to 50 years. The reason being is that the National Trust for Historic Preservation identifies any historic building to be 50 years or more. So that is now 1966. So believe it or not, even though people don't like to admit it, those 1950s and 60s buildings are now historic, and we need to work to save them. So I have some suggestions, or I have some pictures of some 1960s buildings that could possibly be tore down. This is the Danish Brotherhood Hall. We just got this on the National Register. It was built in 1966. It's an amazing example of both postmodernism, but also a great tie to Danish nationalism. So this, even though it's on the National Register, could be in jeopardy. Okay, I love this great mid-century modern, the Lyman Ritchie building, which is for sale right now, which could definitely be in jeopardy. It's a great example of mid-century modern that I think needs to be saved. Okay, who doesn't love Chops Bowling Alley? Look how cool that signage is. That could be in jeopardy if we don't save, you know. And then, of course, our all-time favorite, the Starlight. This could be in jeopardy, and we all know this is a place that matters to this community, and a place we want to save. So I would just want you guys to discuss, and I mean, I'm curious if you guys do discuss this, why 75 years was put into effect, because again, nationally, 50 years is historic, and then all of the demolition review ordinances that I know I looked at, I know Jennifer looked at, they were all 50 years. So just curious why 75, and hoping that we can change it to 50 to save these great 50s and 60s buildings. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other proponents who wish to be heard?
Good afternoon. I'm Rick Lees, 575 South 120th Avenue here in Omaha. I work for Johnson Deconstruct. We are a deconstruction company, and what I'm here to do is to talk about what the alternatives are to demolition. Demolition gets kind of bandied around as the evil of all things. Well, there are some alternatives just to tearing it down and throwing it away, and that's what I'm here to discuss regarding the alternative if this house can cannot be saved, there are some other paths rather than just tearing it down. Deconstruction is simply the board by board, nail by nail deconstruction of the house. Very labor intensive, bringing it all down. If anybody's been around 38th and Farnham lately, you'll see the 4 houses, well, you'll see the ground where the 4 houses that were going to be demolished were deconstructed. It's a very, very cool project. The Dundee Bank did a great job of saving the McFoster's building as well as the materials in these houses. Most people don't understand deconstruction. They don't understand that the processes and the economics and the speed have evolved into a viable, for me, viable business, but also as a viable alternative to not filling the landfill. So real quick, I'm going to give 4 quick points to the importance and significance of deconstruction. First of all, what I just said, the landfill. In great scenarios and in great perfect circumstances, we can save up to 96% of a house material from going to the landfill. The only things we don't currently save are things that you just can't: linoleum, broken tile, painted lead wood, and things like that. Almost everything else goes. Awesome stuff. When you look at some of the places like Voodoo Taco in Aksarben or Lead Bellies here in Midtown, all that material, I swung a hammer on those. My guy swung a hammer on those. And the houses on the Dundee project, the materials for that place were in and installed before we even finished the houses. That's how popular it is. So the landfill aspect, it's a civic-minded, green alternative to just tearing it down and throwing it away. And by the way, the material in some cases is fantastic. We did a building down in South Omaha on 30th and L Street, and I took out some studs that were about this big, counted the rings on that, and there were 325 rings on this piece of wood. The building was built at 1900 even. So that tree that came from was at least 425 years old. Now that was just a small segment of that tree, so you know that tree was, this big. So there's probably another 100 or 200 years on that. So there's some real great high density, high quality, valuable material that comes out of there. Secondly, the nature of deconstruction is very labor intensive. Real quick, what that means is I provide a lot of jobs. We have grown over the last couple of years from 12 to almost 28 people doing deconstruction. And we purposely choose people from the neighborhoods that we deconstructed. So majority of our workers are east of 72nd, north and south Omaha. And so we really provide a service that pulls the disadvantaged neighborhoods into our market as well. Not just civically tearing down houses, but civically employing people as well. That provides an education for the next generation of construction workers. Many of our guys leave our business and go on to construction, obviously making more money, becoming more skilled. It's a great stepping stone into those. Third, what I touched upon earlier is the actual market. It is a business. So when I talk about deconstructing it, it's not just a civic-minded, hey, I'm a tree hugger kind of perspective. People make money on this. So when we come to terms with what this could turn into, it's a money-making prospect for somebody. Okay, so I don't want to say that somebody has to go deconstruct a house and the city or the owner is going to have to foot the bill. There are people that want to invest and to really assist in getting these houses taken down economically, so as not to put undue burden on the folks that have these houses. Lastly, and of no unimportance, is the intrinsic value of these houses. I got into the business because I was in construction, and every time I finished a project and I'm taking the stuff to the dump, gosh, it just hurt my feelings seeing some of the stuff I threw away. And that perspective just evolved. Okay, now I don't just take stuff to Habitat. Now I'm saving materials. Now I'm saving a connection, a tie to that old growth lumber, that material that's been around for half a thousand years. There's some significance to that, and there's a tie to our history, and I love the significance of that. It's very near and dear to my heart. And like I said, it hurts my feelings to see this really great old stuff. Now, can I stop demolitions? No. Are demolitions going to keep going? Absolutely. But if there is an opportunity, if there is a viable pathway, there is a process for that. Deconstruction is part of that. Thank you.
Thank you. Mm-hmm. Are there any other proponents who wish to be heard?
Arnold Breslow, 1240 South 10th Street. I'd like to just view my opinions as one of the neighborhood leaders, and I'm president of the Old Market South Neighborhood Association and active with a lot of the other neighborhood associations. And we feel that the ordinance that's being presented definitely makes it easier for these neighborhood associations to concentrate on things that are more neighborhood oriented rather than fighting with you guys, basically, because that's who it comes down to, about trying to save our neighborhoods and the important structures in them. It's the amount, and I've said it up here before, the amount of destruction that has happened to our city is, I have to say, breathtaking. I recently found a 1930s photo of downtown, and roughly, based on my knowledge, went through very unscientifically, and 50% of the significant buildings in our city have been destroyed. And now it's creeping into the neighborhoods, and it's not only getting, our downtown, our South Omaha, our North Omaha neighborhoods. We're out in Fair Acres and places east of that, tearing down significant structures, and we're losing a lot of the heritage of our city. And what's happening on 10th Street, which I think most of you know about, is partly happening because of your efforts, but it's also happening very much with the young part of the city, the young people who we want to keep here, because it has that mix of old and new. They're walking-friendly neighborhoods. They were bound together years ago by streetcars. The grid is there. There's no reason it can't be used again. It's just that the biggest problem that the neighborhoods have when we get all fussy about what's happening is the fact that we don't even get a chance to get up to bat many times until it's too late. The amount of time it takes to save a building, I don't think you can even get up to bat in 90 days. But it's worth a try, because right now, just like the mortuary on 10th Street, we had 30 days to try to do something. And we couldn't even get up to bat. I mean, I had a hard time finding a lawyer in 30 days. We need time. The other thing we need is visibility. The developers tend to hide a lot of the information, whether it be in new construction or plans to deconstruct. They keep it as tight to the vest as they can because they basically don't want to be bothered with us. Well, I got to tell you something. Those are our neighborhoods. We are the people who put you here, and we are the people that care about those neighborhoods. And we really need support from you so that we should be working together as a team, not coming up here and battling back and forth trying to justify or prove a false statement incorrect. Because the city is at a point where it can grow very fast and very well and solve a lot of the problems related to jobs, related to North Omaha, related to South Omaha, even downtown. I mean, there's opportunities, and we don't need to be spending our time fighting if we can come up with a system that works. The debate about the 50-year versus the 75-year, if you go with buildings that are, I got to say it right, that are less than, or excuse me, that are only 75 years old rather than 50 years old, a lot of the buildings that I helped build when I first started in '65, you're going to tear down. I've seen at least a half a dozen of the buildings I was involved in, and I was involved in some significant buildings as the owner of City Glass Company. And I've had at least a half a dozen of them tore down already. And there was nothing wrong with the buildings, it's just the owners decided that it was easier to tear it down so they could do what they wanted with it. And that is sometimes the case, but definitely not always. So I would definitely say give serious consideration to using the standard, and the standard is anything over 50 years. And I guess that's all I have to say. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Are there any other proponents who wish to be heard?
I do. Hello, my name is Thais Wright. My address is 2867 Baldwin Avenue, Omaha, Nebraska. I'm from Omaha, Nebraska. I recently moved back here from Atlanta, Georgia. I moved back here because due to police corruption, which I find myself having to deal with again. I have video and audio evidence of police corruption. I have tried in vain to get in touch with the FBI and with the city council, pretty much you, and to no avail. I have been,
Ma'am, let me stop you for a minute here, because what we're talking about here is an ordinance.
I understand what you're talking about, but what I'm going through needs to be public information.
Okay,
I have been
but that would have to be in a different setting.
And I've been
because
blocked.
what we're talking about today, it has to do with historic buildings.
I understand,
Okay.
but please allow me to make this public, because I have evidence of police corruption on video and on audio. Clayton County Police in Atlanta, Georgia, and Omaha
Let's have
Police.
a side discussion about that, because all we are allowed to do as a council
Well,
is
they've
to
engaged
address
in
what's
mail
on
fraud.
You have to,
Okay.
please.
Okay.
Okay, what we are allowed to do as a council is only address the items that are listed on the published agenda. What you're talking about today
I'm being
is a
sprayed
different
with
item.
pesticide. I mean, they're taking retribution against me on behalf of James I. Kofer, who resides in Morrow, Georgia, at 6009 Fairfield Drive.
But
They've
that has,
engaged in mail fraud.
ma'am, excuse me. I've got,
I understand, and
Okay,
with
it
all
has-
due respect, I do understand, but believe me, my life and my family's life is in danger, okay? This is not a game. When would you like to schedule a meeting?
We can talk right after this. Okay. The council will be over shortly.
Okay.
Are there any other proponents who wish to be heard? Seeing none, are there any opponents who wish to be heard? Seeing none, the public hearing is closed. Mr. Festerson.
Thanks, Mr. President, and thanks to Councilman Jerem and Ms. Taylor and all those that have been working on this, and for identifying an issue and pursuing an idea and doing a lot of homework on it. It's apparent to me by reading this ordinance and hearing comments today, surveying other cities and seeing what's worked well and incorporating it into what we have to discuss here today. Ms. Taylor, if you would, I just want to engage you on a few points of the ordinance to walk through here. And I want to talk about the status of the current things too without this ordinance. So I believe it's correct to say that if a residential or commercial permit for that regard, in that regard, is taken out for demolition, that can be turned around in as few as 3 days. And that sometimes is what creates a startling effect in our neighborhoods when something is applied for and taken down so quickly, as we've experienced in Dundee and Fair Acres and some of the sites that were noted earlier today. Is that correct?
Jennifer Taylor, City Law Department. Yes, that is correct. And to that process, I think Jay is here as well if you have further questions. But it's my understanding that, yes, a permit can be turned around in as few as 3 days.
And so I think sometimes that's what causes the concern amongst the neighborhoods and also the concern that Mr. Breslow expressed about not sometimes even knowing, but then when you do know, the inability to address or even have any review or any comment or input on it in our neighborhoods. But 9 times out of 10, even with this ordinance, those demolitions would move forward, right? Because 9 times out of 10 or thereabouts, the structure would not qualify as historic in nature.
That can be true as well. There's 2 things that upon an application, I'll use this option to address one other thing too. Upon an application for demolition submitted to the planning department under this ordinance, not only do you have the criteria of 75 years, but to address one point Ms. Gerber made, it does also require review of any any property that is actually currently listed on the National Register. So even if it was under 75 years but nationally designated as historic property, it would require to be put through this review process as well. At that point in time, if it's determined to meet one of those criteria, it would be sent to the Planning Department for a 10-day review period, administrative review period. At that point in time, the Planning Department staff and the Planning Department director would look at the property, review some of our existing historical surveys to see if it's been listed on the survey or has some sort of historical, cultural, or architectural significance. If it is not deemed to have any sort of significance, then that application is approved and it moves forward. Okay. And that would happen with a large number of properties.
And you mentioned the 10-day clause. So in this ordinance, if it's approved, the Planning Department is still guaranteeing a 10-day review of any property. And if you are deemed not to be historic in nature, you would move forward through demolition within that time frame.
That is correct. And then those properties that are deemed to be, as I noted, either unsafe, unsound, or unfit for habitation, i.e. condemned, would be automatically exempt. So that if the application were for a property that was a condemned and uninhabitable property, it would not even go through the administrative review period.
Right, and that's important too, because we don't want to hold up, obviously, structures that have already been deemed for on the demolished list and uninhabitable and under code enforcement in that respect. If you are deemed historic, though, then you do go through the landmark process and the planning board process and the city council process for a supermajority vote, as you described, right?
At that point in time, if the planning department, the planning director determines that there is some potentially there's a potential historic nature to the building or the structure, i.e. it could merit preservation, then it would go through a public hearing process. At first, it would go to the Landmarks Heritage Preservation Commission. The commission would have a public hearing, and it has a number of options in front of it. It would have the ability to either approve the demolition application. At that point in time, the building would be demolished. It could deny the demolition application and take a 90-day review period to meet with the owner and discuss alternatives. That's kind of that stopgap period. Another option the commission would have would be to approve the demolition application conditioned on the building being surveyed, properly surveyed, photographed, and documented. One other thing I will note with regard to deconstruction, as that was brought up, is that one of the criteria that the commission can review when having their public hearing on the demolition application is whether, quote, selective dismantling or removal of usable materials from the building or structure can be economically undertaken in a manner which maximizes the recovery of the building materials for reuse and recycling. So there is also an opportunity for the applicant to, as one of the alternatives, offer to deconstruct the building in that manner and therefore allow for demolition.
Okay.
So at that point in time then, if the application is finally denied by the commission, it would go to the planning board and then city council for approval. And again, if it comes to city council for approval, it would require a supermajority vote.
If it goes all that far and the supermajority of the council agrees it should not be demolished, it's not demolished, right?
It is not demolished. However, also within the ordinance, it requires the commission to, when it sends the denial of the application to planning board, to also send forth a plan and a proposal for putting forth a landmark designation. So once it was, if the council by supermajority vote denied that demolition application, it should also be followed by an application for landmark designation. Because we should not be preventing the demolition of properties that aren't actually worthy of being designated.
And this morning we were talking about governmental subdivisions too, so it'd be accurate to say we don't believe a governmental subdivision like a school district would fall beneath these requirements, right?
Much like with our zoning ordinances, they would not be required.
Because we do have a lot of school construction obviously taking place throughout the city right now, which is why I asked that question. So then I go to my final question, which is the notion that was brought up about the 75 years versus the 50 years, something I understand and has been pointed out as it was today by Ms. Kerber, would be consistent with some national standards if it was 50 years versus 75. And she poses the question, why the 75? We discussed that a little bit this morning too, and there wasn't really a pro or con to the 75 versus the 50 in terms of tax credits or any kind of extra things you would miss out or not miss out on. It was more just a determination about what's appropriate for this city and what the majority of the council might support. Is that an accurate characterization?
That is probably correct. I would say that because 50 is the national standard, there is the possibility that a 50-year-old property could be either locally or nationally landmarked. And if a property were locally or nationally landmarked and it was less than 75 years of age, it would still qualify for review under this ordinance as a national or locally landmarked property.
Okay. But if it wasn't, then obviously it wouldn't.
That is correct.
Well, I would just say that I'm flexible on that point of 75 years versus 50 years, and understand the desire to have that be consistent with the national perspective. And I do, several of those buildings that Ms. Gerber showed, I think do merit the consideration. Right today we're giving to other buildings, the Danish Brotherhood in particular, and for my history with that. But certainly it's a discussion to have with the rest of the council to see what they're willing to do in coming weeks. But I would say I think this ordinance provides the ability to prevent a demolition of a historic structure when justified, but it doesn't cause undue delays for structures that aren't deemed historic, and I think that's an important balance that I think is being struck here. Thanks.
Thank you. Mr. Gurnett.
Ms. Taylor, I want to make sure that I heard you correctly. In your description, you said that ordinances that are being proposed here that you have researched, that there could be anywhere from 68 days up to 2 years, that this could add to the process?
Not in this ordinance, but nationwide, there's various different cities that have similar type ordinances have delay periods that can be as short as 60 days and as long as 2 years. I tried to err on a shorter time frame to be more respectful of our property owners and our developers in our community.
Well, as you know, delays don't set well with me. I can't speak for the rest of my colleagues, but they don't. I mean, we just approved something that took 15 years to get earlier, to get a street, and any delays is something that is hard for me to swallow. So I appreciate you clearing that up for me. Is Jay Davis still here? He is. Would you come down? Thanks, Jennifer.
Mm-hmm.
Jay Davis, Assistant Planning Director.
I'll get straight to the point after a point of clarification. The demolition process for the City of Omaha falls under your responsibility. Is that correct?
Yes, it does.
Okay. Does a property owner have a right to tear down his or her own property?
I'm not an attorney and can't answer that, but if you look at the Constitution, I believe that's correct. It's their own property.
I know that they probably got you involved in this process somewhere along the line, correct?
We talked a little bit. My interest came in, obviously, the properties that have gone too far for repair or replacement. Those are structurally damaged and unsafe.
Okay. I don't want you to think I'm putting you on the spot, but I've got to ask. I mean, we just went through, or I'm sorry, you just went through one lengthy court battle.
Yes.
With a property owners association.
Yes.
When I hear the word delay, and I utilize some of the things I learned in my past life and what I have seen in this chapter of my life doing this job, do you see from your perspective that the possibility of delays could still exist at the same level that they are at today with this proposed ordinance?
I can look at this two ways. Obviously, we know over the years, and that lengthy court battle was part of that, we have properties out there that have been in our possession more or less under the code enforcement realm for up to 10 years. Well, in essence, that property has had 10 years to be resolved either by the owner, historic or non-historic, and if it doesn't happen, then I have to come up and ask you for $500,000 plus a year to tear these houses down until they took care of. On the flip side, the historic properties, we try not to tear down if we can, but two things happen, and I'm going to talk about Fair Acres one a little bit. I was sad to see that house go, But to be very honest with you, the engineers came back and said structurally it couldn't be saved, and we were within weeks of issuing our own demo on it. Fortunately, the owner did it on his own, so we didn't have to pay a large sum of money in the $60,000 range to tear that property down. The same with the Metz Mansion. Beautiful property, wish it could have been saved. People tried to save it, but the owner of the property didn't want to get rid of it. So at that point, it's too costly to try to save. Ended up being torn down. Now, conversely, in the old market, I've got a building I'm very much in love with now because I'm there every day. That was burnt out, and the owner is spending a significant amount of money to bring that back into compliance and keep it a viable historic property in the old market. And I'm saying significant amounts of money. I'm talking millions and millions of dollars right now. That's why the lawsuit started, by the way. So I see this both ways. Now, if you were to ask me about a private developer who wants to tear down a building that may be considered historic, that doesn't need to be torn down, is not in our system, then I think this ordinance is a good thing, because it gives a little bit of time for everybody to back up, take a deep breath, and see if there's some value to salvaging the structure or not. Because a lot of times they're still occupied up until the point the sale is closed. So from that standpoint, I can go both ways. But when we have properties that literally just can't be redone or structurally are so unsound that we're going to have to eventually tear them down ourselves, then the ordinance doesn't affect me there, because Jennifer did a really good job of putting in there what I was asking for and saying to her.
And I'm not trying to pit planning against the law department. Don't get me wrong. We don't need in-house battles.
No.
But what we need is a product that comes out of dialogue that works, that doesn't increase delays, because our phones are the ones that are going to ring when there's a property that has been black-carded time and time and time again. And that eyesore becomes, well, I probably can't say this over the microphone, but becomes a burr in the neighborhood side, if you will. And our phones ring, and it goes from a discussion of caution, a discussion of urgent, discussion of demanding, and then maybe even to the point of threats. And I know both of us have been on the receiving end.
Yes, we have.
Of those. I just want to make sure that we're not providing wording that creates a giant loophole for somebody, a property owner, to start delaying the system of the inevitable.
And I think the way Jennifer had written it, or has written it, is what we talked about, is that if it meets any of our criteria as far as being on any of our lists, the demolition list, the unsafe, dangerous structure list, or even out for demolition bid, that doesn't count, because our criteria for those houses now are structurally unsafe and unsound, fire damage, wind damage, storm damage beyond repair. Once those houses hit that category and they're near parks and schools, we're going to take them down first anyway. And they may have some historic value, but I can tell you, once the fire department gets there and puts a lot of water in something, it's not the same anymore. And again, that's proven time and time again. They're doing their job well, but unless an owner is willing to spend significant amounts of money to take care of the mold issues that come along with that, to take care of the warped floors, there's just a whole myriad of things that happen. You just get to a point where, is it really feasible to spend the money to fix it? The ones that are on our list, there's no fixing. You've all seen the pictures, you all know the properties. There is no fixing at that point. They've been well beyond their life's usefulness when nobody took care of them. And that's the properties that we have to deal with every day, historic or not.
And so those that are watching us out in TV land, our system works through what you just described.
That's correct.
Our inspectors go out and have that up-to-date checklist that he or she goes through, and then eventually it either becomes back into compliance or it's not in compliance. It goes onto a demolition list, then to a demolition bid list,
Correct.
bidding process,
And now,
demise.
right. And it used to be that took a long time to get done. Now it's not so much because we assigned time frames to everything that has to happen as a result of that court battle. So we start taking things out to 60 days, 90 days, 30 days, whatever the case may be, follow up with their second inspection. If nothing's done, the process starts right then and there. We start to move forward with either citation to the owner or demolishing the property, whichever comes first.
Thank you, sir.
Mhm.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. Jerem.
Yes, at the outset, I too would join in a special thanks to Jennifer Taylor, to Trina Westman, and to Jed Moulton, to Jay Davis for his help, James Steele, who's not here today, but his substitute, Dave Fanslaw, is up there, so I'll have to pass along the thanks to him. And to the Landmarks Heritage Board, who also weighed in with comments, as well as the Planning Committee members who weighed in with comments. And I guess the first thing I would say is, in answer to the general question is where did this ordinance come from, it really came, I say, from the neighborhoods who asked me, as a result of what they saw happen in Dundee, to fairly close in time events on Farnham Street and on Happy Hollow Boulevard, where beautiful homes, structures that had significant architectural value were just simply torn down because of the absence of a review process like this. In terms of the time period for the review process that Jennifer Taylor came up with in city law was her attempt to place a balance in terms of moderation on what is out there in ordinances around the country. Some as short as the 60-day review process, some as long as 2 years. This being a 3-step process, once you come through the planning department, their 10-day review, and if it triggers yes, it does, it goes to landmarks, then planning board, and then us. You heard Mr. Breslow say, 30 days is tough. He ran into that with the Johnston mortuary case. The people who tried to save the Metz mansion asked for 45 days, and that particular development team at the time said that was too long. So I do appreciate and am sensitive to the neighborhood's belief that there needs to be a process that's of sufficient length to provide this reasoned analysis of, wait a minute here, is this structure worth saving? Is it worth other options than demolition and preservation or deconstruction? Photographing the surveying processes that you talked about that would be available that are just not there now to neighborhoods. If it were the will of the body, you could eliminate the planning board's part of that, and that would speed it up probably by 4 to 6 weeks, maybe 2 months. But to me, I think 6 months is reasonable, and that's why after we discussed it in that process, it provided this period of time that wasn't really unreasonable, in my view, to allow this process to be vetted in terms of coming up with alternatives. And how we got to 75 years, let me just tell you, I requested that number out of my sense that on this issue it was important to me that the body speak with as close to unanimity as possible. And while 50 years is certainly the standard for the landmark designation, National Historic Registry, we do have means and language within this ordinance that if the building were to be locally landmarked, or not locally landmarked but nationally registered, it would still come within the purview of this. So in trying to get more than just consensus of 4, I asked colleagues for their input, and I thought that what I heard was the number that I came up with here. And I think on this issue, we want to speak as close to with one voice as we can. It was important to me. And, you know, there's people out there in our constituencies and in TV land, as some people say, they sometimes don't see the number of times on minor things that we speak with unanimous votes, but they see the potential issues of contention and division, and I thought on this, I wanted something where we were together. So that's where that came up with. In terms of neighborhood support, there were a couple of others that did weigh in. Dundee Memorial Park sent a letter, Fair Acres Neighborhood sent a letter, Morton Meadows sent a letter. Of course, the ones that are already in from Midtown Neighborhood Alliance and Sarah Howard, state senator, they've offered their support. The questions that were asked about the placarding causing a delay in their demolition, I think you, Jay and Jennifer, clearly answered. If you're already yellow placarded, you have a structure that is not delayed in any sense other than what the ordinary process is that Mr. Davis said can be very time-consuming and very lengthy. This doesn't add anything to it. They're exempt from this ordinance. Although I would point out a save, a building we've talked about ad nauseum in my district, 3019 Pacific Street. Somehow Jennifer Taylor found an owner's rep for that house that's been spoken about here forever. How she did it, I don't know. Colombo, or you found a buyer, the Urban Village guys, and they are in the process of taking a building that was supposed to be demoed and are restoring that house right now at 3019 Pacific. So there are some that do get saved, even in that process. And hats off to you for your help, Ms. Taylor. So as I hear the suggestions, and if it were just me, and I thought, okay, how do I quickest get to 4 votes to try to pass something? I mean, we could have had 50 years. But I really wanted us to be on board with that as a body. And that's where that came from. And that's why, unless there's somebody who wants to amend it, I think that's the way to probably come through for vote. So I'm pleased that we've had so much help on this, that there's so much support for this, and it will create a reasoned review process rather than a rush to demolition. And that's what this ordinance does. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Festus.
Thanks, Mr. President. I just wanted to have one more comment here. And say I appreciated the line of questioning from Councilman Gurnett, because you do have to look at something like this from the other perspective. For the demolition cases that we do battle with that take too long in many respects from our perspective, and that we fight to sometimes see through to the end, we need to make sure that a case like that can't somehow game the system unintentionally through a well-intentioned ordinance like this. And I think we've determined that's not the case, and I do appreciate him coming from that direction as well. And since the tragedy of 525 Fair Acres did come up in the conversation here, I wanted to address that here for a minute too, and point out that that was a very unusual case and very contentious case, obviously, in the neighborhood. But extenuating circumstances, that was the case of a multi-million-dollar renovation gone bad, multiple code enforcements and fines along the way, lawsuits between the owner and the contractor that led to its ultimate demise. But I do want to point out that this ordinance going forward would prevent a situation like that from occurring in that neighborhood ever again under normal circumstances. So that's why I think the Fair Acres Association has supplied a letter in support and is on board, as Councilman Jerem pointed out. I just want to make that clear for them going forward if they're watching this today. Thanks.
Thank you. Dr. Thompson.
Yes, thank you, Councilman Jerem, for the 75-year compromise. I have developers and private owners in my district who would have heartburn with the 50, but I'd be more than willing to support this with the 75-year compromise. Thank you.
Thank you. No further lights. Next item.
Pursuant to City Council Rule 7H, due to no meeting being held May 31, 2016, the third reading and public hearings on agenda items number 79 through 94 shall be held on June 14, 2016. Pursuant to City Council Rule 7H, due to no meeting being held May 31, 2016, the second reading and public hearings on agenda items 95 through 104 shall be held June 7, 2016.
Motion adjourned. Moved and seconded to adjourn. No further lights. Roll call.
Jerem? Yes. Melton? Yes. Pauls? Yes. Thompson? Yes. Festerson?
Yes.
Gurnett? Yes. Mr. President?
Yes.
We stand adjourned at 3:38.